Let's check in on tourism too, another industry struggling at the moment. Of course, I want to catch up with John Hart, who's the Australian Chamber of Commerce Tourism Executive Chair. He joins us from the Sydney CBD. John, you must be so frustrated. What more can you do to particularly convince premiers in Western Australia and Queensland, and I'd say probably Tasmania as well, they always seem to be left out of it, to actually drop these closed borders, these hard borders? How can they justify them any longer, except perhaps from people from Victoria?
Well, Chris, the bottom line is they can't justify it, and we've got an industry that's being held to ransom by those premiers that aren't allowing us to get back to business. And we lost in the first 6 months of this year 136,500 jobs out of our industry because we can't get people moving around the country. And we're going to lose a whole lot more unless we get these borders opened. It's just grinding the industry to a halt, and we know that we're going to have a lot of our businesses that will never reopen unless we get these border restrictions lifted pronto.
I just can't understand what is going on in Queensland. It is the tourism state. Yet they still have this hard border. They can't let people in from New South Wales. Yet Anastasia Palaszczuk has spent taxpayers' money, allegedly about $15 million, to get the AFL Grand Final played in her state. I mean, does she want people coming to Queensland or not?
Well, that's exactly right. And, those sort of events are really what drives demand, but it's not going to drive demand from the rest of the country if we can't have the border open and have people attending the events. There's this myth that intrastate tourism, people travelling in their own backyard, is going to make up for what we lose out of interstate tourism. It's just rubbish. Intrastate tourism is down 25%. It's not even half making up for the loss in interstate movement. It's just an absolute fallacy, and we've got to get these borders open, particularly to New South Wales. I mean, that's a huge travelling market, and New South Wales residents can't move into Queensland, where they always holiday at this time of year. It's
nuts. I just show a story from the Sydney Morning Herald, Hamish Hastie reporting that the chair of the AFL, Richard Goyder, he's a West Australian. He chairs Qantas and Woodside as well as the AFL. He won't be going to the grand final in late October in Brisbane because he would be forced to do 2 weeks quarantine back in Perth. Now, he's been criticised for this, but I think he's right to make that stand. He can't afford to take 2 weeks out of his serious jobs with Woodside and Qantas. And why should he apply for special treatment? What should happen is the premiers of Queensland and Western Australia and other states should just have sensible rules.
Absolutely, Chris. And in his role in Qantas, he would be all too well aware of what the impact is. I mean, they're feeling it on a daily basis. They've already laid off so many of their workers to try and keep themselves afloat whilst there's just these ridiculous restrictions in place that are stopping people moving around the country.
Well, the good news, I think, in New South Wales is that just about everybody who can at the moment in school holidays is out and about in the region, so spending some money, so that's good news. But as you say, there's so much money there that could go across the borders into Queensland if only Anastasia Palaszczuk would be as welcoming of ordinary Australians as she is of AFL footballers.
Absolutely, Chris. And yes, it is true that during holidays and on weekends we are picking up that intrastate movement, but still we're 25% down even on that intrastate movement to pre-COVID. So it's not even covering itself, let alone making up for the interstate movement that we've lost.
Thanks for joining us, John. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.